So you're buying a home and you've fallen in love with your dream home. You found it and you realize that there's multiple offers. Okay, you're heading into a bidding war. What do you do to make sure that you win your dream home? I'm Chris Mullenberg, founder of the Mullenberg team at eXp Realty, and over our 10 plus year career, we've won hundreds, that's right, hundreds of multiple offer bidding war situations for our buyers. So we've really got a handle on what the levers are you can pull to make sure your offer is the one that gets to the top of the stack. Even if you've got some strengths or different weaknesses about your offer, we can make this work. So here's the rundown of the things you can do to make your winning offer. First off, may seem obvious, but yes, the strongest price offer does often get a good look from the seller, but it's not always the one that wins in the seller's mind. There's a lot of other terms beyond just price to consider, so I'll get to that here in a minute. But you do want to go in with the best price possible, and that's where you work with your agent or team to come up with a good understanding of market value, so you can feel really good that you're not overpaying for the property and you're not underpaying or lowballing, so that you make a really competitive offer. And you'll get comfortable when an agent is educating you on the market data. You'll know, hey, I'm comfortable up to this number, and that's my number. If I lose by a few $1,000s, you'll know. If you're willing to let it go for a few $1,000s, you'll know that that's your max. Some buyers decide, hey, if I lost by a couple $1,000, I'd be really sad. So let's add what's called an escalation clause. So escalation clauses are really smart. Basically works like eBay, that you say you will automatically beat any competing offer up to a certain amount. So if you offered $500,000, but you're willing to go to $520,000, then that's what we would write in the escalation clause, that here's our offer. We're willing to beat any other offer by, say, $1,000 or $2,000 up to a max of $520,000. This ensures that you don't get beat on price accidentally. Another thing to consider with price is that in today's world, a lot of buyers are asking the seller to pay some of their closing costs, right? For interest rate buy downs or closing cost help. If you can be a buyer that covers your own closing costs, you're gonna look a lot stronger to the seller. So if you have the cash available to do your down payment and your own closing costs, really consider doing it, because it just makes you look even stronger on paper. So the next thing to consider beyond price is as-is condition or inspection language in your offer. Lots of sellers, if they've got multiple people to choose from, they trend towards the buyer that's very easygoing and very flexible and okay with taking on some fix-up items on a home, because every home's going to have some inspection items. So if you, the buyer, say, hey, I'm comfortable to take this home in as-is condition, it does still give you the right to do a home inspection, do all the inspections you want, and of course you can still walk away and get your earnest money back in most cases. So you're protected by the contract. Even if you said as is, you do have outs. And here's the reality, guys. If you said as is and then you do a home inspection and it turns out that the roof is completely shot and it needs a new roof for $20,000, of course we're going to go to the seller and try to negotiate. Hey seller, you probably didn't know your roof was shot. We didn't either. Now we know, and we're not comfortable as is at this price anymore. And any right-minded seller is probably going to say, okay, I've got to now disclose that to every future buyer. Let's see if we can work something out here. So there is some leeway if we find some serious issues, but consider as-is condition, because most home repairs that we find on the home inspection report are just a few $100s or a couple $1,000s. So don't let that stand in between you and getting your dream home. Okay, appraisal gap. Let's talk about appraisal, because if you end up offering more than the contract or list price of a home, things start ramping up in a bidding war. Sometimes the appraiser is going to struggle to find comps that support that elevated price. So again, if you have a home listed at $500,000, you get it under contract at $520,000, what happens if it only appraises for $500,000, right? The lender, your lender, will only lend on the appraised value of $500,000. So what happens to this $20,000 gap? That's what the seller is going to be really interested in, because in a typical contract, it's a negotiation. Seller is either going to drop the price down to the appraised value, or the buyer is going to come up with some extra cash to close this gap. So in a competitive situation, of course, the seller doesn't want to bring their price down. Why would they? They've got multiple people interested. So if you, again, have a little extra cash or can find gift funds or something to help cover an appraisal gap, you will look very strong to a seller, because you're basically guaranteeing that that seller is going to get their contract price that you've offered, regardless of where the appraisal comes in. And one safety net that you do have on the appraisal, we can always cap that number. So you can say, hey, I'm willing to pay up to $10,000 over appraised value. So if the gap is $20,000, I'm willing to cover 10 of it, basically. So you can put a max on this so that you're not just covering an unlimited appraisal gap. Another thing that sellers look at is what's their net bottom line number. And so they're taking their purchase price that you're offering them, minus their closing costs, minus any concessions, all the way down to what do they walk away with. So something that buyers do that we help them do is pay the seller's closing costs. And it doesn't add up to much. It's usually a few hundreds of dollars or a couple $1,000s. So again, if you, the buyer, really want this home, it's your dream home, maybe you extend that olive branch and say, all right, seller, I will cover some of your closing costs. That just looks really cool. It's a thing that not every buyer thinks about or does. And it really sends a message to the seller like, wow, these guys really want the house. I like their vibe. So the final thing to consider to get your offer accepted, gone are the days that we can really send love letters or, write a letter to the seller and tell them all of your story. And, some sellers got in trouble, unfortunately, in the last few years by apparently discriminating against buyers. That was the claim anyways, because they were reading these love letters. So a lot of sellers and listing agents anymore are saying, hey, no more love letters, but you still can appeal to the seller by playing into their story. Like, where are they moving to next? Do they need some time after closing to get moved? Some sellers need a few days, a few weeks, sometimes even a few months, ideally, to get moved to their next home. And if you, the buyer, are very flexible, and you say, hey, we'll give you all the time you need, we're very flexible, that's going to come off really easy to work with. And often that's the buyer that gets the preferential treatment, is the one who's the most flexible with the seller's story. So help them feel really comfortable, help put the seller at ease. Wherever they're heading to next, you're willing to accommodate. So thanks for watching. Do not let your dream home slip by because you missed one of these points in your offer. If it's getting competitive, which the market, at least here in Northern Colorado, is already getting competitive again. So don't lose out on your dream home. Work with a top team like ours that really has seen all of these scenarios play out dozens and dozens of times, and we know where to push, where to pull, and how to massage the best offer to make sure that your offer gets accepted. So don't go it alone, and don't go with an agent who doesn't have a lot of experience in the market with this.